Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Typical Skeptic Podcast. It's a big honor for me to have my guest on today. Today I have with me Gene Decode. You might have saw him on Carrie Cassidy, Project Camelot, or he's done other shows, and he always brings amazing information. Big shout out to my good friend Indigo Angel. She's like a sister to me. She was the one who helped me set this up. And a little bit more about my guest. Gene Decode is a former U.S. Navy veteran and a widely followed whistleblower and spiritual analyst. Known for his deep dives into deep underground military bases, black ops programs, spiritual warfare, Gene has become one of the most talked about figures in alternative truth media. He decodes intel drops, analyzes geopolitics with a biblical lens, and shares downloads from source regarding ongoing war between light and dark forces. Gene is known for his never showing his face publicly and often uses images of a dog for anonymity and spiritual symbolism. He emphasizes sovereignty, spiritual awakening, and multidimensional awareness, warning of artificial timelines and encouraging connection with divine source. And you can follow his work at genedecode.org.
So my platform is on Rumble. It's Real Gene Decode, and then on True Social and on Telegram, the team that helps me. I've never been on social media, but I do have a platform there that's the BFS, the Blessed for Service team, helped me um, to have, and that is also Real Gene Decode.
That's awesome. One thing I wanted to start off with, Gene, was like, I don't know if you talk about this much, but like I've seen you on other shows and you always give a lot of good intel drops and stuff like that. Like, but did anybody ask you, like, how did you get started in all this? Like, how did you want to start uncovering truth? Like, did you have a spiritual awakening, or was there like something that like triggered you to like start diving in deeper into stuff?
So the first platform, the first person that got me into the internet was a man named that had a platform named Blessed to Teach, and he was a really nice man, a good man, but we didn't completely see eye to eye on a series of things. So I left and went out on my own. However, all my life, even pretty much raised myself from a very young age. I didn't learn to read or write until the fifth grade. I skipped school third and fourth grade because I thought it was stupid. They're just having you write down stuff and pick multiple choice questions after you memorize the answer. How's that learning something? It's like, well, how stupid. Then I had a teacher that pulled me aside in fifth grade that was a real kind lady. And then I got bullied pretty bad in junior in elementary, mid school, and senior high school. So she pulled me aside and said that my future is going to be controlled by the fact that I have some kind of education. If what I'm saying about my home life is true. So I wandered the streets, and although I had parents that were separated from an early age, my father worked for Martin Marietta, and he was had quite a few patents. And I used to go through the living room when he was on his second marriage. And even at that time, I was pretty much, I've always been a night person. So I was always going to bed with the sun getting up. Go to bed with the sun, and get up with the sun, except in my case, the reverse order of which one. I got up with the sunset and went to bed, just a little after. And I used to love to ride my bicycle up to a lake and paddle out in a canoe on the lake and watch the sunrise. It was really gorgeous. And so, and in that, once I did learn to read in fifth grade, this teacher, so to avoid the bullies, just come from the bus straight to her office. And so I, in fifth grade, went from a no reading, able to count to 10, but not able to read any even numbers, to a 12th grade education by the end of fifth grade. So in sixth grade, she said, you need to do something to earn a grade. So pick books in the library and do book reports and all that, and just do that for my office again. I said, I've already read everything in the library. She goes, you read the entire library? What do you think I was doing last year? Well, you went through all these remedial readers. So I thought no, I was bored. So I also, on my own, I've read all that, so I don't want to reread it again. She goes, well, what about the encyclopedias? Yeah, I read them too. She's like, you read the entire Encyclopedia Britannica? I go, yeah, it was reasonably interesting. She goes, reasonably? I go, it seems kind of old about the information, a lot of it. She goes, what do you mean? Well, when I go through my the living room at home, my dad's doing all these experiments. It was literally like Tesla out in Wardenclyffe. There were lightning bolts flying all over the room. He had all this electronic apparatus. He was partly responsible for the technologies that built the little hand. And this is back in the early 1960s. So the little hand on the Mars rover in 1960 that reached out and took up soil on Mars, and all this stuff. And I was like, why are they saying we're going to the moon and doing all this stuff when we're already on Mars? So this is why, people, we never went to the moon. Yeah, not in that rickety freaking thing they're showing you, but they had all these technologies, and I actually saw, a anti-grav device and all kinds of stuff. And so that's why I said the technology seemed amazing. So she said, okay, well, I'll bring you books. What do you want to read? I go, something that explains the universe and everything. I want to just understand everything to the utter depth of why are we here? Why am I here? What is the point of existence at all? What governs existence? So she said she was a Buddhist. So she said, well, for me, that would be the I Ching. I said, bring it in. So I read the whole thing, did a book report, and I found the hexagrams fascinating as heck. So I spent years, when I went into seventh grade, I actually took, because I needed the credits to go into college, I took both seventh and eighth grade algebra at the same time because I went to the council. I go, so let me get this straight. I need, he goes, you can't do both at once. I go, why not? And he goes, because one builds on the other. I already know the stuff. He goes, sit down and take a test. So I took the test. And he goes, okay, you got everything right. So go ahead, you can take them both. So, he goes, why do you have all this knowledge? I go, because it's just interesting to learn. And he goes, who taught you? I taught me. He goes, what? I go, other than beginnings of learning to read. So he goes, but you have all this things you're saying that are pretty odd, because I was talking about the tests are pretty lame. And he goes, well, that's up to a college level. Yeah, it's pretty lame. But he goes, if that's college level, I'm not impressed, He goes, what are you working on now? What is that weird stuff you're doodling? I go, it's not a doodle. It's the meaning of the universe. And it was the hexagrams from the I Ching. He goes, that's the meaning of the universe. Yep, I can feel it. I can't explain why. It will come to me, but it's very complicated. And so you've got to combine these or something or put them over something or put them into something or do something with them. So I'd be sitting in class and wind up in the principal's office because I'm drawing them in different combinations, trying to figure it out. And it does turn out that is the meaning of the entire universe. It is the universal structure of the entire universe. If you combine the symbols in the I Ching from one to the other side of the wheel, you get star tetrahedrons, which is the structure, what they call the eight-carton universe. And so that was when I was pretty much wide awake to a lot of things. I mean, not the really evil satanic stuff. That wasn't, till much later. And then, of course, during, since my time was when I was in 12th grade, I got, and I was already living with a friend of mine by the middle of 11th grade. I just left home and we got our own place. And so, and I was making really good money and then reading like crazy and researching like crazy. And then had a group of friends. We got rock climbing and backpacking and hiking and skiing and all that stuff. And they all, other than that stuff, I didn't talk to them because of what I talked to them about. They go, you are really weird, because they were mainstream. They go, what are you talking about? And so I was pretty much a very private person other than just having friends to ski and rock climb and backpack. And early on, I didn't do that too much with people, because the way I do all of those things, having done them from the time I could learn to walk, I was on skis. It was, people didn't even know what it was, in second, I think it was in my second class in fifth grade or something, where they were bullying me so bad, they were going, well, what do you do? Because they were talking about the Super Bowl. I go, the what? The Super Bowl. I go, what's that? And they go, what do you do on weekends? I go, ski. What's that? And I described it to them. They go, it sounds incredibly dangerous and stupid. But by the time I got in high school, it was all the cool kids did. So I joined the ski club to get a free ride up there and reduce rates on tickets. And they go, can we ski with you? And I go, sure. And they go, where are you? We're riding up the lift. And they go, where are you going to ski? And I go, up there. They go, that's outside the ski area. I go, yeah, but that's where the good powder snow is, which is this huge couloir coming down off of a ridge. And they're like, how are you even going to get up there? Shoot the ridge in the talk. And they're like, so, all of this, I've always been outside the edge of everybody else of what their experiences are. And I've had always abilities that because I didn't talk about those things, I thought everybody had, and struggled with them because I didn't talk about people. I just thought you're supposed to get, because my father raised me old school, where you got a beating if you pretty much talk. Children should be seen and not heard. And so in that, I stayed pretty much to myself. And it was at a time, having to go into the military because of the Tet Offensive. My draft number was a 28 in the lottery. The top 128 letter numbers that they drew were going straight into the Tet Offensive, which was running over 90% fatality at that time. I'm like, I am dead. So I just thought, well, where would I not be dead? Navy. So I joined the Navy. Got out of high school. I went in, took the tests, kind of freaked them out with that too, because taking tests seems like stupid to me because, of what, being able to look at an answer key and see the answers without looking at the questions because somebody thought about the answers and what answer it's going to be. And, being born a remote viewer, I thought everybody could, and that's why I said it's stupid to the counselors and all this. The tests are stupid because you look at the answer key, the answers. It's like, so in the entry exam in the Navy, they were like, you scored higher than anyone ever has, so we'll contact you. We have to get a hold of DC first, and so then I got this special program and all of that, which put me. I tried to volunteer for the Navy SEALs, but my eyesight was not. You had to have absolutely flawless eyesight with no correction and to go in. So they said, well, what else would you like to do? And they gave me a special program, and I went in on that and wound up right away on Special Forces submarines that did all kinds of black ops and stuff like that. And so that again made me aware of things that is outside the norm. So by the time I was on my third submarine, we were doing things, and I could, pretty logical, obvious what you're doing. And we had a CIA, we called it a guy, Spook, CIA guy on board the submarine, and I was at that time a high rank already, and he was telling me to, have my part of, my division do certain things, and I'm like, that's not what we're supposed to be doing by the directors of the Navy. And he goes, well, I have special, da da da. And he showed me the paperwork. Okay. And he goes, I go, you want me to do what? So the things he was having me doing, it made me quite obvious the Cold War, this is in the 80s, was a farce. I go, so let me see. We know where all the submarines on Earth are. And I know that Kissinger sold all of our technology to the Soviets. So then the Cold War is a farce. And I'm sure the Chinese know this too. So, I'm like, and then, it just became more and more obvious to the point in 1990, I was on my last tour, and I had gotten to a certain rank. And then at that level, to get any higher, they give you a test. And they had told me to keep one of the guys that worked for me awake and never allow him to get to sleep. Keep racking him out every time he lays down to go do a job or do something. And I said, why? Because he will fall asleep and we'll take him to captain's mast and bust him over and over till we bust him out of the Navy. And I go, why? What's he done? And they said, because we're telling you to, that's why. And I said, I need to know why you want him to get out of the Navy after all this. He's been in the Navy over 10 years. He's been a good guy. And why do you want an asset and such a good person to be busted out of the Navy with a dishonorable discharge? They told me, if you want to see rank again, you will, or you will never make rank again. And that's exactly what happened. I said, I will not do that. It's not, it's immoral. Besides the fact it's against the United States Code of Military Justice, standard operating procedures, everything, Secretary of the Navy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So on my last tour, after many, many years of going for rank over and over and over and over and over, I was on a shore duty tour in Hawaii, and we finished an inspection with such high marks for the first time ever. We got off at the middle of the day. And I was walking with the guy that I worked for who had made rank. He was originally my boss only because he had time in rank, and he made rank. And I'm like, how in the world did you make rank? And I didn't. He was an African-American gentleman. I said, I know the Navy has a quota. I don't mean to be disrespectful or, racist or anything, but is that why you made it? And he said, yes, in my case, yes. I go, so the guy in that building over there, he made the rank above you. And I've talked to his people. I've never seen him at work afternoon. He goes, I was working on Fort Island. You had to take a boat out there. And I'd go to the gym. He was going to the boat. And I'm like, how come he made rank? His people dislike him. They said he doesn't know anything and he only works half days. He goes, well, he's a Mason. I went, he's a what? Because I had all my life, every night I go to sleep, I would wind up on antimatter Earth, negative Earth, in respect of charge. And in that world, the entire human race that is left was in concentration camps, like FEMA camps, run by the Masons at the first level. They were a word you didn't even say. And it was a word of absolute terror. So when he said that, I froze in my tracks. I said, he's what? And he got like 10 feet away and noticed I wasn't walking with him anymore. And he goes, what's wrong with you? And I was saying, I couldn't have heard that. I called it my dream world. I thought it was just dreams, right? But although I started meeting people on this earth from there, and I was trying to figure it out, I go, okay, I'll bite. What is a Mason? He said, well, it's a black organization, secret organization you have to be invited into and all of this stuff, but they seem to want to, I didn't do it because they seem to want control over everything in your life. And at certain levels, you make certain oaths that seem to me pretty dark. And I'm a devout Christian, and they seem to be heading in a dark way at the upper levels from what I could see. So I'm not going to get involved in it. So I said, okay. So at that time I was, trying to figure out what I was going to do when I retire, because with what I did in the Navy, the only way I could get a job doing that in the civilian sector would be working for the military or stay in the military. And they told me to get out. I was a dinosaur and, they're going to get me out if I didn't get out. So I didn't want to work in the military or for the military anymore. So I was trying to figure out different things. And so there was a group of people I was working with trying, different jobs and different things. And this one lady was very unique too. I talked to her on a few things and she seemed to know a lot of things. So immediately after talking to this gentleman, I went to her. We had a meeting anyway. And I said, have you ever heard of the Masons? She goes, yeah, who hasn't? I go, who are they? They're an Aryan Brotherhood. I'm like, well, the guy that I just talked to that mentioned them, first time I've ever heard of it here. And she caught the word here. She goes, what does that mean? I go, another day. Just explain to me what. And she said, that's not really the right question. I go, what's the right question? She said, what's the Federal Reserve? I go, that's not the right question. That's not my question. She goes, no, that's the right question to start where you want to go and what you need to learn. I go, well, that's who makes the money. That's on the money, Federal Reserve. She goes, is it part of the government? Well, obviously, it's the Federal Reserve. Yeah, is the Federal Express part of the government? I go, well, okay, viable point. Obviously not. So she said, find out what it is. I go, where would you recommend I start? She goes, you're in the military. What do you do? Follow the money, right? So where do you go to follow the money of the United States government if you think that's part of the government? I go, congressional records for the congressional budget. She said, right. And where would you go to find that? In Hawaii? And we're on the main island, Oahu. I go, it goes to the Supreme Court Law Library. She goes, yeah, so go. So she goes, also look up the testimony of Senator Lewis T. McFadden on the floor of Congress. So I did that. And because of my rank and stuff, they let me down into the basement, into a lockup area with all the congressional records, the federal budgets, everything. And I immediately started looking up things I knew from antimatter Earth. Like I knew they created a disease on purpose to target the human immune system using either it was originally in the engineering stages, either S8 or T4. And we all know what that is today. And when it came to this Earth, I'm like, whoa, this is getting bad. All the parallels, because, lasers and the black helicopters and all that were things I had seen on antimatter Earth long before, 200 years before here. And so time moves differently over there. And I thought, well, this positive Earth is, I'd learned it was negative positive by that time, but it was just lagging behind in time. And so when I found the funding for that $150 million budget in the 1970 congressional budget section, I think it was section 4 or section 5, that said they would a joint research by the KGB, MA6, and CIA at Fort Detrick in Maryland to engineer it. I'm like, yeah, so much for the Cold War. The U.S., the U.K., and the our secret agencies all work together at Fort Detrick in the United States to create a disease to kill people. And then I found all the stuff on Lewis T. McFadden and the removing of gold from Fort Knox in the 30s to Swiss bank accounts of the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, and found out they're cousins, and they owned the entire banking of created a banking system for the entire world and owned it all. I'm like, and then I started seeing the really dark underbelly of the satanic sacrifices and all of that, and the human trafficking. And then I learned in the process about the deep underground military bases. So that was in 1990. Then that I had that epiphany of this and started researching that. And then being still in the Navy, I had a top secret clearance, and as command duty officer, when I stood duty, I had to inventory all the safes. And you have to go through every document page by page and assign that you inventoried it. And I said, well, if I'm going through it page by page, why don't I just read it page by page? I'd never done that before. So I would take other people's duties to give myself more time to read everything, because there's so much you're having to do. You can't read it all in a day. So I eventually read everything in every safe, and I'm like, yep, it is worse than I thought. It is even darker. So after a little bit of time, about a week or two of investigation I had, was teaching martial arts. By that time, I had gotten into martial arts in 1976 because I was tired of being bullied, and said, I'm going to control the situation from now on. And I, prayed to get the best instructor that could possibly be. And so I got a UDT Navy SEAL who was the top Navy SEAL in the world. He ran the SARS school as my first instructor. And then actually my second instructor was even more lethal than that. And then after that, I had 2 Shaolin instructors. So by 1990, I was a teacher, and I took my top 5 students one day. I said, we're not going to have classes. I'm going to show you all a bunch of material, and your job is to prove that what I'm telling you is not true at all. And I'll give you all of the material and all of the places to start your research, and piles of books and things you can get and read. So amongst those were Operation Vampire Killer by the policeman McLam, and then also Behold a Pale Horse, The Monster from Jekyll Island, The Committee of 300 by Martin William Cooper. And then as they went out and came back within a week, said, way worse than what you said. That wasn't your job, was to prove me wrong. I don't want it to be true. And so then, I started even deeper research, and some of them came to me with things, you've heard of the dumps? I said, yeah. Do you want to see one? Yeah. So started getting into that and learning all about the different ones, the ones in Hawaii and all over the world at the US, and the project on that. And then, which is Project Mark Rand by the Rand Corporation. So then in 1992, with one of my students came back from Japan with a sword, and I had gotten attacked by a guy the day before in Kapiolani Park. They used to attack, the Samoans would attack military people. And so I did defeat him, but it was grappling because I had done a flying scissor throw, and he was so huge that when he hit the ground, he dislocated one knee, and then he flipped over, dislocated my other knee. So after I knocked him out and stuffing him upside in the trash can, I crawled over to my car and reset my legs. And then the next day, my student came back, and we were up above Waikiki and what is called Tantalus Drive in the bamboo forest up there. And I was teaching him sword passes, but my knees weren't completely back. So into strength, and I didn't calculate for it. And I was coming down my left side in what's called a right zenkusudashi. And when you shift and come down your right side, if you don't shift to a right zenkusudashi, you'll cut your leg off. And so in the process of shifting, I wasn't on even ground. It was out in the forest, and my right leg was up above me. And as I started to shift, the knee started to come apart. So part of my brain said, stop the turn. Of course, the other problem is I'm coming down with a sword. So as it started to slice into the skin over my patella, my kneecap, I ki'd, and I bounced the sword with my chi literally before it cut into my kneecap. And so my student was standing behind me. I was just wearing the lower half of my gi and a tank top, and I looked behind him and I said, guess what? He goes, what? And he knew I used to joke a lot. I was just like that, same voice. Because you learn to be that way in martial arts, especially with SEALs and Shaolin and those. So I said, I just cut my knee open with your sword. And I ruined your sword, I think you can tell now, because it looked like a knee imprint in the sword that bent the steel of the sword with my chi. And so he goes, yeah, right. And he was laughing. Oh, no, serious. And I go, take the hilt of the sword apart. There's a double lashing, and I'll hold it shut so I don't bleed too much and doesn't get any dirt in it. And the first lashing, I'll hold it together and tie it tight. And then the second lashing, I'll take off my tank top, put it over to keep it clean. And then we'll cut a piece of bamboo down before you do all of that. So I have something to use as a crutch to get down to the car. And so I got down to the car, got home, washed it out, and bandaged it all up. And I was watching the closing of the Olympics. And this was August of 92. So you'll be able to see precisely what date this is. It was the closing ceremonies. And I didn't want to go to the hospital because I don't trust doctors much at all, especially by then. And watching it, and in the process of that, my friend, my fiance, was wondering, I had a friend that brought back from Korea, one of my students, a Korean comforter that was, and this is Hawaii, it's 85, but I'm laying with this thing wrapped around that leg because it's throbbing, and they noticed that heat makes it not hurt so much. So I had this huge blanket, and she goes, why do you have that on there? The heat helps it not hurt so bad, so I can focus on, the closing ceremonies, which I wanted to see. So meaning well, she went to the dryer. She was drying clothes and got an armload of hot clothes. And from a standing position, I'm on a couch that's just, a couple feet off the floor, dropped all this laundry on my leg, and it hit sideways, a glancing blow, and it caused the bandages that I put on to break free and rip it open even wider. So I yelled and jumped up on my one good leg, and she goes, what? I go, it just tore open. She goes, I know you didn't mean, but I was starting to go into shock because and blood was shooting everywhere, in the carpet. I'm like, oh no, let me get in the bathroom. And so I hopped in one leg and was going into shock and seeing stars and threw up and diarrhea and all that. And I came out and I was going to tell my student, go get your vehicle and take me to Tripler to get this sewed up. And I've, you know, done the bet. I can't stop it now. I've lost my mental control. That it's just, you know, and I've wrapped all kinds of towels around it and it's all getting bloody. And I'm like, I am just bleeding like a stuck pig, as the saying goes. And so he started to go. And all I knew is suddenly the lights closed down around my, you know, in my eyesight. And the next thing I knew, I'm instantly looking down on the Milky Way. And I'm just like, huh, what happened? And my fiance later said I literally went over backwards like a tree at that moment and bounced off the concrete floor twice. And then I stopped, and she ran over, and I didn't have any pulse. I wasn't breathing. So she immediately started CPR while he was already running to get his truck, which was a mile away. So he had to run a mile and then drive back and, you know, drive into a no parking place and back in and get me. Oh, so that takes a while. So in all this time, she's watching the compressions for my heart on the clock on the stove. So she knew precisely how long I was gone. And so at that moment, and I'd never had this kind of contact, you know, where when I asked what just happened, it was the most strange thing I've ever experienced. And I had to experience strange things all my life. It was just everything everywhere answered me from inside me in my own voice. And I knew it wasn't me, but it was everything. And I'm like, you just died. Huh. Okay. I go, what's happening now? He goes, you're going into ascension. Okay, what's that? And in the meantime, the Milky Way had disappeared in the distance and Andromeda was going by. And I'm like, what is happening? Well, you need to get some upgrades and some stuff before you go to a higher density of service. And I realized at that moment, if everything everywhere is talking to me, that would be God. It was kind of obvious. And so I got all the way to the central sun, and in the inside of the central sun, which was no surprise to me with my work on the I Ching, was a geometric platinum kind of goldish glowing object known as the tetragrammaton, I believe in Hebrew, of the throne of God. And I was just, okay. And then I said, so in all of that trip from the Milky Way to the center of the universe, I was just asking all kinds of questions and things. And I said, so if I'm going, it seems like this ascension and higher service is a real honor. I don't feel that I'm really been that great of a person in my life. I'm kind of average and in some ways less than average. And God told me, you've been good enough. You've done enough, and you've tried this last few years of your life to be the best you could be. You've turned around and completely changed who you are. I go, well, when you learn what I learned, it tends to make you choose. You either choose one thing or you choose the other. And choosing the power and the money and all that was pretty obvious not a good thing to do. They said most people wouldn't go there to be direct with you. And I said, that's surprising in some ways, but in other ways, after I've learned what's on Earth, he goes, tip of the iceberg. And I said, but I felt there's one thing I should do that I didn't do, because you could go back. And showing me when I said it seems like an honor, he said, you've done enough to go and advance to a higher level. I said, what did I miss? It's like everything in the entire universe went by. All these things I hadn't done. It was like every book ever written. It was a list of what I hadn't done. I'm like, how am I worthy? He goes, you're about average. Well, it doesn't make me feel better either. It's like, but so then I need to go back and do this one thing. It seemed very important. God just said, well, it's one of many. He doesn't look at one more important, that everything's important in the long term. And I said, he goes, you could go back. And I said, when you showed me that, it seemed to me I have to be corporeal to go back. In other words, in a body. He said, right. I said, but you also said in this ascension thing, I'm not going to be that anymore. I'm going to be like a being without physicality, a pure energy being. And he said, correct. And I said, so then how do I go back? And he goes, you'd have to go back to the body you left. But in the process of that, you actually died one time before when you were young. The knowledge is in your head. You would have to find it and will your body back to life. I go, okay, sounds like something I could possibly do. I want to do that. He goes, are you absolutely sure? And I said, why? He goes, you're going back to ground zero. I go, ground zero? They're going to blow the earth up? He goes, could, maybe, possible. It's possible. And I had actually seen all my life that, this world would wind up with everybody in FEMA camps and all of that. From what I learned and researched, it became even more obvious. And he said, yeah, all that and possibly even worse. They blow up the planet. And I said, so I'll still go back then. I'll try to make that not happen. I'll try to help. And he said, okay, but realize the consequences. And if you mess up and you go to the dark side, what happens to you? And that's it. So in process of explaining everything, I became aware of, he downloaded the information of the cabal from the beginning of the beginning of it, from the beginning of this universe and then some. So we became aware of the depths of it, even beyond the Earth, in the Milky Way, falling galaxies, all of this stuff. And so it took me 30 years to assemble it all. It was such a vast amount of information. And I realized that when you're not corporeal in God's time, even though I was gone 30 minutes, when I came back and, my girlfriend later told me I had been not breathing for 30 minutes, that she had been doing CPR for 30 minutes, and that she sat me up at the moment I was getting back in my body when I came back. And because my friend was there to take me to the hospital. And at that point, from that point on was a journey to assemble the 30 minutes of 30 million years of information that God gave me during my death, time. He showed me any question I asked. He showed me everything there is to know about it. And so it took a massive amount of time to assemble it. And in a lot of cases, then I started talking and going to these meetings. I met a lot of amazing people. Every time I asked, God would bring somebody amazing. Like I met Martin William, excuse me, not Behold a Pale Horse guy, the Committee of 300, Dr. Coleman. I met Jordan Maxwell, Anthony Hilder, all kinds of people. I got to talk to Jordan Maxwell for 12 hours straight alone, from sun down to sun up, being a night person. So, I had a lot of information and a lot of knowledge. And so I was trying to wake people up. But at that time in the 1990s, and my commander of the base command I was at, when I was going for retirement, he said, so how's this, like every captain, when you're getting ready to either retire or move to another command, they say, so how's this tour been and da for you? And I said, he goes, so how's this last tour of your military? I said, the most eye-opening of my entire existence. He goes, why? And I told him, and he said, he just looked at me, and I said, I know you can't be a captain in the U.S. Navy and not know what I'm talking about. And he goes, some of it, but not, there's a lot. And I said, you do know what the Federal Reserve really is. Who prints the money? Is it part of the government? And he goes, well, it's a private group. I go, run by whom? And so he asked me to put together an information package for him. And then it just came back through the guard mail to me. And I could see it read through it, but my boss then came and told me that I would keep my mouth shut if I knew what was good for me. And I said, I will do that off base and out of uniform, but I have freedom of speech. And he said, not if you know what's good for you. And that's not coming from me. It's coming from way up. Keep your mouth shut. I said, not going to happen. So I had 2 attempts on my life there in several sense. It's an ongoing thing, but that's pretty much the meat of all. Where's the beef? There's the beef. That's the meat of where I started, and then waking my in the '90s, it was rare to hit somebody that knew almost anything at all. You would talk to them about the Federal Reserve or the truth about AIDS. I would go to AIDS conferences in Kapiolani Park, and they would have people come up and talk, and I'd get up on stage and say, I know 16 cures. Which one would you like? And so it's like, they were like, what? I go, you don't think they're going to make something they don't have a cure for if they're susceptible to getting it? And so it was, in that process, when I would get off the stage, I had the most unlikely of people. Like, I had a homeless young man came up to me and said, would you like to meet a person who had been on the in the Philadelphia experiment on the ship? I go, absolutely. And he said, so give me your number and I'll give it to him. And then next week down here, if he's okay, I'll give you his number. So I drove over. He was on the other side of the island. I drove over to Kaneohe side and I met him. And when I walked in, he sat me down. He showed me a picture of himself in his third-class radioman uniform and said, if you have the original movie with the kind of pinkish yellow footage, that's actual footage in the movie, The Philadelphia Experiment, look at the fantail on the port side sitting, you'll see me. I'm older now, but this is me in my uniform as a third-class radioman. I said, okay. So I went home and sure enough, that was him. And then coming back from Fort Island 2 weeks later, I was sitting on the fantail of the boat going to the subbase, and there was a guy sitting next to me, had no right hand. And I had the same kind of feeling I had from this guy, and I couldn't keep my eyes off the guy. And he looked at me and he goes, the answer to your question is yes. I go, I didn't mean to, He goes, no, I know you're not staring because of my hand. Your question is, was I on the ship? The answer is yes. I go, so you're telepathic? He goes, ever since that day, yes. And so I talked to him all the way over, and it's just a series of events that prove the things that I had been researching over and over again. People showing up that had been in certain programs and different things all my life. And so that process made me realize. And then, in the process of trying to tell people, like at the Kapiolani Park meetings and other meetings, and at Martin William, in talking to Dr. Coleman, people in the line, I talked to them and they just look at me like deer in headlights and didn't seem to want to know, even though they're read the Committee of 300. And I couldn't understand it. So I used to try to go to New Age bookstores and give out information. I'd first fill the place, and this next weekend there'd be 3 people. Next weekend I'd be alone. I'm like, nobody seems to really want to know this or care. And so it wasn't until the internet came up, and at first it was a slow process. I'm not very techie. And so in 2014, I was working on my back deck, and God just told me to blow myself off with a leaf blower, get all the sawdust off, and go in and turn on the computer and type certain things into the computer. And he put me in the dark web, and or not the dark web, into 4chan, which I had never seen before. I didn't even know what it was. And it was just a series of questions that kept getting added to, without it like posting, so to speak, just a timestamp, like this date, this time, this, and it just kept going on. And just questions. I recognized the questions, a lot of them were extremely high intel questions. I'm like, who the heck is this posting this? I mean, things about secret space programs, solar warden. I mean, the stuff I've been telling people look at me, you're making this stuff up, about the Federal Reserve, about Fort Knox, about, on, and the Montauk Project, and time travel, and Camp Century, and Camp Hero, Mark Ultra, all of this stuff, on and on and on. MK Ultra, sorry, we're on YouTube, so I'll try to.
No, we're not on YouTube. We're good. We're on Rumble. It's okay.
Yeah.
I might post it on YouTube later, though. But I figured we could talk more freely here, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So it just was a process in which, I realized it didn't seem people really wanted the information. And so then in 1916, when Hillary won the election, and then of course I saw the nukes going up, and that was it. And then suddenly I sat up and it was 2008, and I go, what? The guy goes, not allowed. I'm not going to allow that. So he had reset the timeline. He said it'll be different next time around. So that was 2014, on the reiteration. And so then in 2016, Trump got in, and shortly after that came the Q board. And so with that, then it started having to kind of a structure to it, where it's kind of, little postings and all of that. And then people started waking up, and then there was Serial Brain was posting all kinds of stuff. And I was a channel, like I mentioned at first, Blessed to Teach, that I was following, who would put a lot of Serial Brain stuff on. And I was doing similar things of decoding, because that's part of what I did in the Navy, is decode information. That's what I was trained to do, is to see patterns and decode it and break the coding. And so I was doing my own kind of little decodes, like Serial Brain kind of leaned the way. And I said, well, that's part of the story. Why isn't he talking about the rest? So I, went to Rick, who was B2T, and I said, I have some stuff like that. Would you be interested? Some like that, but more detail? And he goes, could you meet me? And I go, I guess. So I'd be like, oh, a 13-hour drive. Well, that's going to be a long, explain this, So, okay. And they said, well, I'm actually up here skiing in the mountains, and you could come up. And so I wound up meeting him with only a 20-minute drive, and I was talking to him, and his eyes were just like, wow. He just said, yeah, sure, send me some stuff. And first it was a couple small things I did. Then the first real decode that I did was Trump going to the UK, walking in front of the Queen, reviewing the troops, going to also to the Westminster Abbey and signing that big huge book, which is actually the ledger and book for the Crown Corporation, becoming the CEO. I decoded all of that. And he said, wow, these are awesome. And then a very close person to me said, well, why don't you give him the big one? I go, the dumbs? He goes, yeah, because it takes 150 hours for me to put that together. That's why. It was like, no, the world needs to know. I go, well, they already know. There's Phil Snyder, there's Martin William Cooper. They don't seem to care. Yeah, but you haven't done it. And you put things together in a way that seems to call to people. So I said, okay. So I did a huge decode, put it up for him. And then the second one I did, and I put a Gmail together for people to contact me if they had questions. I was, after the first one, getting 30, 40 questions a day. And then I did a second one because I learned a whole lot more in the process of people not just sending me questions, but sending me information. I found a massive amount of more of the dumps in the US and then all over the world, and all kind of interconnecting train system, maglev trains that are mock trains and stuff underneath there. So I did a second one, and one day I got up, I had finished all my emails, went to bed. I had 3 left, or the hard ones, so I was going to get up and do those. And probably the 10 or 15 that came in overnight, I got up and opened my Gmail, and there was 3,000. I'm like, what? And it was flowing down the screen, adding 20 more per minute as I was trying to answer it. It was jumping down the screen. I'm like, oh no, what happened? And God goes, it went viral in Germany. Somebody translated your second decode into German. I go, I can't answer this every day. So he said, get help. So that was the process of getting people to help me to answer questions from all over the world. And it just developed outward from that. And that was an experience too of, learning who you should ask things and help you. Who should you ask to help you? That was a learning experience as well. So in all of that, that's my journey. Pretty much outlined the major highlights of it, which I've done pieces of that, but now you have it all in one place. So back to you.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. Thank you. I thought it was interesting, and I could sit here and talk to you for an hour about martial arts, because I was into martial arts my whole life too. But I mean, I'm sure people want to hear about the dumbs and stuff. So, I mean, do you have any recent intel about what's going on in the dumbs or the underground facilities?
Yes, I've done a few different platforms. I've shown and done stuff that I've gotten some new information in. Originally, with the first platform that I mentioned, he wasn't big on certain things. So he asked me not to do those portions of the dumps. Like, what are they used for? Because it gets a little odd, a little strange, a little unbelievable. Well, actually, a lot unbelievable, and then also really, really dark. So he said, keep it kind of just where they are. That Phil Snyder has information with latitude, longitude, even, and then I had what they're used for, but I hadn't put it out like the chrome stuff that they get from children through terrorizing children, the creating the ultras, the spark gap grids for that, plus the particle weapons, what are called DO now, directed energy weapons, and research and development, plus the back engineering of downcraft like Roswell and many, many others, plus the hybriding of the beings in those craft for what they were planning, which I call or has been called Alternative 4. The dumps were Alternative 2. They have a series of the deep state of alternatives that they have been trying to put in place to control the world and to ensure their survival forever. So the first one was to pre-ionize the Earth's atmosphere. Originally, I didn't get a grasp on why that was until I found out about the ascension event for the entire planet and the CME and the photon belt, what they called the Masonic ring. And then later, Alternative 2 was to the dumps. And then I found out about the space programs. And that was Alternative 3, to build bases on other planets and the moon. And then Alternative 4 was what they called Operation Bluebeam, to unite the world under a new world order, a one world government in which they control everything. They control the money, they control and track everybody. And the technology and the patents are completely out there. You can find the patents for mind control, uploading for materials that go into somebody that will self-assemble to Tesla-phoresis and upload somebody's genetic structure, every mental thing they've ever thought, felt, anything, and it'll create a virtual person in the internet, and then it'll reverse the signal and work on taking that person over, track them within a fraction of an inch where they are. Literally, if they're in a bunk bed and they're in REM sleep, show their dream, show they're in a bunk bed, show them they're the second bunk up, show them precisely where they are. There's a gentleman in Russia that was showing all. His friend was in REM sleep and all that. He hacked into the deep web. And I've actually seen it taking over people when I'm driving on the highway, getting everybody to come to a stop, all at the same time, 5 lanes of traffic going 70 miles an hour, coming to a complete stop, except me and 2 cars that took the ramp to get out of that bus. I'm like, what the heck? I look at my mirror coming down the other ramp to get on, and they're still not moving. And it's a bright, sunny day, and it's completely dry. And I'm like, yeah, it's flexing its muscles and getting control. So this is the Project Bluebeam was to, as Reagan had said, what if there was an alien invasion? Wouldn't we all put aside our differences and come together? So that was the point. We surrender everything to come together to fight this enemy. And they have actually, the groups that left the Earth, the breakaway civilization, primarily the 3rd, 4th, and 5th Reich types, have used that to take planets throughout the Milky Way. Over 500 planets they had originally gotten under their dominion by bombarding it with meteors and then coming in and saying, there's a group coming. What you just experienced is this group. That's their first attack wave. The second wave will be giant creatures that are really ferocious, and we're here to help you to fight them. And in actuality, they're here to take put you in a Babylonian money system and a one world government, take over your planet. And that's what they do over and over. Same thing their plan was for here. And so in planets that withstand that idea, they divide and conquer, and they get people infighting within different governments or countries or groups, and create all kinds of different, take their sacred books and divide it up into different ways of understanding things, so that different groups will fight each other that have been together over different things, ideologies. So there's many, we see much of that precise same tactics used on humanity for, I mean, forever on Earth. They have been doing this. So in the process of learning about alternative 3 and 4 and already researching the DUMBs, I realized that they had, when I went out to contact in the desert a long time ago, there was a building out there by the largest standing in Orson Welles piece of granite freestanding on Earth. And the man that had the building next to it where you park to walk out to this thing had built a portal building, a building that would portal you to anywhere else. And so they had used that technology in the DUMBs to portal to different planets, the moon and all this, where they already had the bases that they had put when they, using Maria Orsic and Victor Schauberger's technology, along with some ancient Indian technology of the Romana, in the 30s had left the Earth. They had already started bases on the moon and Mars. There's a movie, it's kind of a B movie called Iron Planet or Iron something or other. I can't remember the full name of the movie, but it's showing a swastika shaped base on the moon, which is real and is there. And so in the DUMBs, they have jump bases that are going from one to the other. And, in my process of trying to wake people up, and the average person didn't want to know. The people that did want to know, at a certain point, even my student of 18 years said, I can't take this anymore. I want to live a normal life. If this is where we're going, I want to enjoy what I've got left. It's like nobody seems to care. He'd been with me trying to help wake up people for over a decade. He says, it's not possible. We're done. We're cooked. We're a cooked goose. They control everything. They own everything. We're done. So I'm going to enjoy my life. I'm going away. And so he did. And I totally understood that. And I didn't see any chance of it whatsoever. I didn't know that there had been an alliance developed under Howard Hughes and Trump's grandfather, uncle rather, and Von de Graaff, that had started working with Tesla originally, and then later using Tesla's technology and getting high-level people infiltrating, just as the deep state does, cabal, all the organizations and everything, and working towards taking this group down, this secret deep state government that's worldwide running things and owning everything. And so knowing and studying all of that on both sides, for a lot of people, they don't understand what Trump and what the DUMBs and what this and what Elon Musk and all, and they see some of what Trump's doing and they don't understand it, and see what's going on in Ukraine. They don't understand it. I do. I know why he does what he does. I know what he's doing. I know a lot of it looks dark, like Operation Warp Speed. I know why. I understand completely why. And so in going into the DUMBs, what I'm currently working on is a complete update on what is in them also, going from all the technologies I mentioned, jump gates, including all the way up to all of the different types of technologies, creating Chimera, which is part of the reason why there was a massive flood that wiped out Atlantis, because they were doing the same thing. The household cat is a actual chimera from the days of Atlantis. The half man, half goat, all of those satyr kind of creatures, half horse, half man, all of that. That man creature that protected the labyrinth, all of those were created in Atlantis. And so that was destroyed, and the remnants of that, of Atlantis and Lemuria, tried to stop Lemuria. Lemuria was the continent that was in the Pacific, tried to stop them and wind up creating a catastrophe on Earth called the Great Catastrophe. In the final war of Gilgamesh was the general for the Lemurians, and it literally caused the Earth to crack apart the singular plate that used to be the surface of the Earth into pieces, where we now have different chunks, plates, and they settled to where they are within 40 feet. This was about 150 million years ago. Carried catastrophic flooding that darn near wiped out about 90% of all species on land, and about almost that same percentage on Earth, because you created separation of the oceans and levels, and all kinds of things happened. So in that, the remnants, which at that time Atlantis had already had one mass catastrophe and broken from a continent into 5 islands. And they were building underground facilities too. Before them, the civilization was Hyperborea, which was also building underground facilities. Before that was Polaria, which was also in their head, the Uyghur civilization, which was also the Nazis were also building underground facilities. So this has been going on forever, of these underground civilizations building stuff on and on and on underground to try to ensure their survival. And you have also the fact that in the dumps and researching how far and how vast and how deep they went, came to look into Admiral Byrd. And in the process of learning about Operation High Jump, and then going to his Arctic flight and finding that in his diary, he actually met with people, he said, that were inside the Earth. And at first I thought, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me. How in the world could that be? How could the Earth be hollow? But then in learning, going back into the physics and learning how objects form into, how the planets accrue, and they start picking up torque and spin, and in watching the experiments that they did in the space shuttle, where a spinning drop of water with different materials actually open up from pole to pole in the middle, and a large amount of the heaviest material will go to the center. And I'm like, yeah, a U4 toroid that is hollow in the middle with material around that. And if you're talking the heavy stuff of the table of elements, well, all the heavy stuff, uranium, thorium, plutonium, are radioactive. You get enough of that, and you can create a small star in the center of the planet. A low energy nuclear reaction will form. And so then that creates a gravity wave, and gravity, I had in my research realized, is not a pull, it's a push. Would push the material around it out, and you create an electric dynamo, which will then open up the poles. Electromagnetism is more than 30 orders of magnitude stronger than gravity. And so then you have a hollow Earth. So it totally makes sense. And so in all of that, I realized there are tunnels. I found tunnels and systems like the Mammoth Caves and other, Mount Vesuvius has tunnels that go to all the way in both poles. There's a one in Denver area. There's another one in Dulce that goes all the way to the center of the Earth. So they have these as well. So there's this group. Several civilizations have gone into the Earth, and to get rid of the constant warring on the surface. They became very spiritually advanced. So you have the Agarthans, the Shambhalans, and many other civilizations. A total of 7 different civilizations. There's essentially 12 places on the inside of the Earth, and then 7 on the surface of the Earth for tectonic plates after the breakup. And so in all of that, realizing all of this stuff, some of the tunnels and systems go all the way through the liquid mantle in areas. There's tubes that go through the liquid mantle in areas where the lava goes around it. The magma, that is a mantle. It's not the center. It's a mantle, like the mantle on a lantern, it goes around in between the crust on the surface and the crust on the inside. And just like the oceans, it has currents, and those currents create eddies where things are opened up. Where you, like in the oceans, you'll have islands, and you'll have volcanic activity forming islands in those areas. And then you'll also have, within the magma itself, you'll have opened up areas. And so there's tunnels that go all the way through. So on the domes, I'm currently working on a complete update. So I'm finishing up. I did a deep introduction to it on my Rumble and on my deep dives on my genedecode.org website. And then I did a deep intro part 2. And now that's getting ready to, I'm getting that done. I'm going to be live streaming that very shortly. And then also I'm working on a whole series on Antarctica, being the remnants of Atlantis and Lemuria. It's really obvious if you look at various maps like the Bausch map or the Perry Reese map and these other maps showing it with little or no ice. And then also it used to be on Raspberry Shake. You could see all kinds of piers and everything, quay walls and all kinds of stuff around until they blurred it out after I showed that. So I even showed that they blurred it out now because they found out somebody put the information out. We don't want that out there. So they're now putting out, more information on all of that as well. So yes, back to you.
I was going to ask you about what you know about the MyLabs, because I have a lot of people who come on my show who are MyLabs and and SSP people. Do you feel like people that are in parts of the programs are being taken to the dumps currently and like experimented on and like maybe even like running like simulations or what do you think's going on with that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's majority younger people. They look specifically for people with gifting, young children. So it's like, at certain points in my life, I just had a feeling to dial back on the testing, dial back what I'm picking so it doesn't make it so obvious that somehow I'm getting answers to a level that other people don't get. So don't do that. I just had a feeling, don't do that. And so, like I said, my parents were divorced when I was in 2nd grade. So in part of 4th grade, my mom temporarily took me, and she was in California. And then again in 8th grade, she tried it again. She'd gotten remarried and thought she might be able to take care of me, and found out there's no way, because I'm just a handful, so to speak. She's like, this kid is, I don't even know what he's talking about anymore. I don't know what to do with him. So she just sent me back to my father. But when I went to her, they tested me, because I was in 7th grade at that time. And they said I should go, they can't advance me to the grade level I should be in, and that they needed to retest me. They were kind of alarmed at how high I tested, and they needed to retest me. And I go, uh-oh. So I just tested a little better than normal. So they said, we'll advance you to 8th grade. It must have been some kind of anomaly or something. I said, yeah, it must have been, because I'm like feeling the feeling. And so there are, even within people I know that have gifted children, I warn them, the children especially, tell your children not to share with anybody at school things they have abilities to do. Like they can see shadow people, for example, or they can see little people, or they can see into parallel Earths, or you can move through time sometimes. Don't tell your friends that at school, because a person I know, one of the persons said, the young lady said that, and then when she got home, the police were there, and her parents were there, and they're going, why are they asking what happened at school today? And the police asked her, you see shadow people? She goes, I'm fine. I told her, don't lie, just say you're fine. I'm fine, I'm good, I don't have any problems. They go, you don't see shadow people? I don't have any problems with any of that stuff. So they left. And then, she contacted me and said, why they asked that? Because they'll take you into Child Protective Services. You'll disappear. You will be gone. You'll be trafficked. They'll use drugs and all kind of stuff, put you in my lab, all this kind of stuff, and even AI and stuff inside you, and turn you into a super soldier, or turn you into an asset, because they're losing, and they have lost a massive amount of their individuals in the underground bases, and a lot of the bases too. And they're scrambling, trying to hold on to something. And so they're desperate now. With Trump getting in, he's not just deporting them, he's actually sending some of them, first to Gitmo, of course, others to Greenland, and others to the backside of the moon, and others other places, because he's taking down the structure. And the dumb war was started to be funding his first term for $500 million, training the U.S. Army and Special Forces to fight underground. Well, if there aren't there, why would you give $500 million in funding to do it and have training and have all this put together? And so that's been ongoing to clean out these things. And, people ask me about them all the time about, they don't understand and say, how could it possibly be all these 10-kilometer earthquakes are them? I said, not all of them. You have ones that are natural. If you look for P and S waves, if you only see S waves and you're 10 kilometers deep and you don't have a deep pressure wave first before a shearing wave, that is not possible. It's not natural. Like we currently have a storm going through our city from the east. I grew up here. I was born here. Storms don't go that way this time of year, ever. I have never seen this, so I know what I'm looking at. I'm looking something geoengineering, and the same thing goes here. So these children that are, getting these kind of questions and then disappearing and all of this, and then we see these deep underground earthquakes with only shearing waves, and we see you track them and you post a map of where you see them. I go, that's a maglev line. Oh, that's obvious. That's a dome. Okay, that's a spark gap grid dome like China Lake. And so all of this is making it very, very like the recent power outage in Spain. I'm like, oh, that's obvious. That makes it really obvious. Yeah, they're stopping a child trafficking network and human trafficking and weapons trafficking and drug trafficking network, shutting it all down so that they can get in there and clean it all up. And in the process, they're monitoring from space, and they're trying to get their high-level MyLab assets out of there, and they grabbed them before they could. So, if you'd like, I could go into that. I could probably pull that up, that read on that.
Yeah, that'd be great. This is amazing. I just want, I don't want to get off track because definitely want to talk about that. But like, are all the DUMs connected, and these mag trains? Is that also connected as well?
Yeah, for the most part of the over 300, I know now. Tucker Carlson had a lady he was interviewing talking about, and he goes, "Excuse me, you look like what? What?" And she was a lady. She's done some really excellent work, and then Redacted is also talking. Eric Heller was at the neutrino station down in South America. It was, Antarctica, South Pole. And he was in Congress and talking about it. And he goes, yeah, there's nothing under DIA, is there? And he goes, when are they ever going to stop pulling dirt out from under there? And I've actually, you can fly into DIA and rent a beater car and go sit out on Tower Boulevard. But as you drive down the ramp in the day, you can see these huge long trucks pulling up on top of the thing and dumping dirt. And I track that thing. And even going from the sea terminal, what do you call it? Where not terminals were the final place you go to pick up your luggage, but the sea wing, going on the little underground shuttle to there. And there were a older and a young stewardess, and the older one was talking to the young, don't get off at the terminal. I got us the special guided door underneath everything. And she goes, all right, I was hoping you could. And I go, yeah, we'll see if I ever see you on a plane again. The young one, I'm like, yeah, you could be being trafficked. That's what you could be. So in that, they connect by maglevs, and people never, it was obvious to me because I knew, so I would track famous people like Obama or Bush, and you would see them making a speech in DC. in Congress, for example, and then 2 hours later, be in Tokyo or Beijing. I'm like, in 2 hours, you got from Washington, D.C. to Beijing, and you were in Congress, and now you're talking to officials. You not just got on a plane, flew there, got off, went through all that other stuff. You're suddenly already 2 hours. I mean, how is that even possible? Unless there's these high-speed shuttles and portal systems. It's obvious that they go across the entire world. There's over 10,000 all over the world. There's the mileage is, I've lost track. It's in the tens of thousands of miles of these maglevs. And the Ukraine has one maglev that goes from Odessa. That's why it's so important. Why the French are saying, if the U.S. will take Odessa, if the U.S. will not back Ukraine anymore, we'll go in and take Odessa, because it's where the underground train goes from Odessa to Kiev. And then from there, it goes out all over the place, because they're trafficking organs and people and all kinds of things all over the world, weapons. And I mean, over half the weapons that were sent there did not go into the conflict there. They went all over the world. That's why you see MS-13 and Sonola and all of these big cartels having Stinger missiles, real high-end technology, tanks. I mean, all kinds of things, because they're trafficked all over the place. And then you also have in the United States and most all of Europe and many other places in the world, freeways under the ground where the big truckers will get under. And early on, I had a trucker contact me and show me a video of him going in New Orleans. And another one, I got another guy that showed himself going in North Carolina and coming out under Mount Shasta, coming out of the underground. He drove across the entire U.S. underground. So they have all these routings and everything, and the tunnels and the huge facilities are all interconnected. And learning about the one under Denver, like Eric Keller said on Redacted, I had known that since, 20 years, that the big cities in the U.S. especially, but also all over the world, they have levels of cities under them. As you go down, they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And the first one is at the least the size of the city above. In the case of Denver, it's bigger. And then the one under that is bigger yet, and one under that. So there's at least 6 cities layered down underneath. And people don't understand. They go, well, who would want to live down in that? They're thinking like a mine. The old ways of mining and tunneling. That's not what they do. They have particle weapons. They can bore at extreme speed. So in my recent deep intro, part 1, I showed all a list of many, 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 many patents showing the tunneling devices and the nuclear energy apparatus for underground support of these facilities. Then underneath that, you have submarine, like coming in under Point Magoo. Submarines go under Point Magoo, in under the United States, using the aquifers, which are deep underground river systems in actuality, and come out in Virginia, under Norfolk, Virginia. So nuclear submarine can go underneath the continent. And the plan was to be able to hook up the submarines to power the bases, the nuclear submarines as well. So I learned about that as well. And I've actually seen when on that last tour in 90 to 94, I think it might have been on one of the submarines I was on in Hawaii, but the island of Oahu blew its power grid, and they needed something to jumpstart the power stations on this island. And so the New York City was tied up, which is a Los Angeles class 688 submarine, type 688 type submarine. And so they brought their reactor online, only went up to 80% power. Brought in extra shoreline power lines, so they reversed power, and only at 80% power, not only supplied the submarine, but the entire island. And so they booted up the power system for the entire island. Well, if you can power an entire island, you can certainly, that's including big city like Waikiki and all of that stuff. You can certainly power Chicago, New York, or something underneath it the size of that, or even greater. And so that's why they have a deep underground system, a water passageway system that for the submarines to use. It also goes up through the Five Fingers lake system up into the Great Lakes, and they go down the St. Lawrence Freeway and all of that stuff. And over in Europe, they're underneath a lot of the canal systems. Going in certain areas, they can go from Italy all the way up to CERN underneath. The submarines they can get it up into Lake Geneva. So these underground facilities are, of course, also connected to off-world bases on planets that are within our system and moons, and even out other solar systems outside ours. So the system is vast, and the groups, it made sense to me that they would, even before I found out about that, I was expecting to find that information, because if you look at how these deep state elite are going up into the 13 bloodlines, I first thought, as Fritz Springmeier said in Be as Wise as a Serpent, then I found about the black nobility of the black, gray, and white Pope. Well, then I realized that can't be running the earth either, because you look at the egos of these beings, it gets to the point where they're like the beings in Jupiter, in the movie Jupiter Ascending. They don't even like each other in their own families. They look down on each other. I am better than every living being in the universe. And so I will have my own solar system, my own planet, and anybody that pollutes my planet with their presence, I will wipe them out, or my solar system. I will erase them from existence after I play with them as a toy and for sport, or harvest their materials for longer life. And this is how they are. So I'm watching the geoengineering and the poisoning of our water and the shedding done by Operation you know what all over the world. It's obvious they're not here, because they would not allow that. They would not only try to bring us down to 500 million, they would take us down to zero. And then they would eliminate each other one by one, family by family, until it's one family. And then within the family, that's how egotistical they are. The top groups are not here. And they're actually out in the Milky Way and other systems, where there are systems where there is no high-level intelligent life. The planet has plant life and really beautiful, but there's no high-level intelligent life. So they'll go there and develop that planet for them. That's it. And they are part of the deep, deep, deep cabal that run the Earth as part of the and the military industrial complex and the deep space part of the different groups that run it on Earth, the upper families and all of that. They run all of that here. All of those are their minions. So the ones that people hear about, like Klaus Schwab, or these Anunnaki children and all of that were bred in World War II, like van der Leyen and Kaya Kallas and Klaus Schwab and Soros. Those are just, they're idiot children that are, not even full blood, as they call it. They're not pure blood. They have pure blood, they believe, from the gods, their gods, which would be certain species, like one of the two star systems that orbit us is Nemesis, with the primary outer three planets inhabited by the Anunnaki, which is Helion, Argota, and Devereaux. And so,
I was going to say, was it the Anunnaki? Because we hear a lot of stuff from the Sumerian tablets that they genetically modified humans and stuff like that. And I know you're Christian, so I was like, how does that tie in? Do you think it ties in in your belief system, or in an overall? It's fascinating though, either way.
What they did is they eliminated part of the coding at the time humans were first on Earth. We're not originally from Earth. They destroyed first homeworld and their second and their third. They blew Tiamat into pieces. And then we were a moon of Tiamat called Kingu. It came to settle in this orbit, so we used it kind of like a space ark. And then at that time, we were 12 stranded, not 2, genetically speaking. So, DNA, deoxyribonucleic mononucleic acid. So that's 2 strands with 4 information carriers in between the strands. And then the strands define which of those are activated to manifest you as how you are. And the rest they say is junk that's not being energized. It's not junk. It's the code, part of the code, that helps to assemble the other 12 strands, the missing 10 strands. So in the 50s with birth control, it actually activated one. And you started having triple helix children being born, 3 strands. And that was TNA. And then you started having 5-stranded children being born, what are called the crystalline children. And that's in the 80s, because all of their genetic experimentation to try to limit us and kill us off winds up doing more help than damage in the long term. You get extremely gifted and powerful children. And so the next layer above 5 would be 12. And so what's happening is the Earth is already raising its vibration because we're already in the outer edges of the photon belt. And so that's raising the Earth's energy into 4th and 5th density. It's already there, as are most species on Earth. So within 3 places on Earth, they took the codes, genetic codes, and locked them kind of like in an energy vault. And they locked it under 3 facilities. One's under the Vatican, deep under all the other tunnels and all that other stuff, is what they call a seed vault. And it locks those codes in. The other one is in Greenland, and the other one is in Antarctica. So these 3 power nodes locking the codes of humanity in makes so that humanity is not a threat to them. If we get our 12 stranding back, we're a massive threat to them. Without any weapons at all, with our abilities, we could defeat them just through those abilities. And so people they couldn't destroy those. The engineering they did, the Anunnaki and the other groups, the Draco, the Alpha Draco, the Zeta Reticuli, those was to lock us down and pull those energy structures out of us. And in the process, they couldn't get rid of them because it's part of the energy structure of the Earth. Well, then you would destroy the Earth. And they don't want to destroy the Earth. They want it as a commodity or a ground for materials and other things they need to use, like things for increased life, like they showed in Avatar, where they get certain things from certain species to make them have longer life because they can't use the technologies like the energy chambers that you could go in, and a person who's a person that's sold could go in and get their age regressed or regrow a limb. They can't use them because you have to have a soul to go in there, something that's holding the energy of the Spirit, the light of God from the Holy Spirit inside you. Well, if you don't, and it magnifies that, and you don't have anything containing it, what happens to the person? Spontaneous combustion. That's what happens to the person. They found that out. And poof, the person's gone. I'm like, well, that's why you see, Kissinger, yeah, he lives a long time, but why didn't they take the technology? They have it. Why don't they use it? Why do they use the chrome stuff? Because that's their only alternative. They can't use it. They tried. We can use it, but they can't. And so, that's the seed vaults. We don't have to go storm the Vatican because they're actually in the process of, as people ascend and be more kind and considerate and respectful, what are those giftings given to us? Who gave them? Who created them? Who made us? God. So what are those giftings? From God. You're getting back your God-given abilities to stand against evil. That's why Christ said in the Bible, I'm like a mustard seed compared to what you're capable of. Because of those giftings, and as we become more kind, considerate, and respectful and helpful to each other and stop the wars and all this other stuff, it's starting to crack the seed vaults. And it'll eventually blow it up from inside because those come from us. They're in a vault, a frequency vault. And as we merge our vibration with what's in that vault, it tears it apart from the inside and outside. It cracks the vaults. And we'll go back pretty darn quickly to 12 strands. It's part of the ascension process. It's going to be a massive advancement at a certain date coming up reasonably soon when the Earth and our solar system goes into the hard part of the photon belt.
Yeah, someone had a question in the chat. I don't know if you heard this, Gene. Renetta Jones died. I felt like she was a great researcher. She was on my show a bunch of times. I don't know if you were familiar with her work, but someone in the chat wanted to know. They said, Rob, will you please ask Gene about the mountain pre-Egyptian monuments in Texas that Renetta was seeing? I guess Renetta was seeing, I know she talked about it. She was seeing like Atlantean, Egyptian, like beings in in the mountains of Texas. Do you get into that at all?
Oh, absolutely. So on my website, gendecode.org, on the membership area is a decode that is called, that goes into what is in the Grand Canyon. So there are several different people that have found items of caves and underground things in the Grand Canyon. One is a man named Kincaid, and he also found a Egyptian pyramid in the Grand Canyon. And we have pictures of that, and then in this decode. And it goes into the fact that the Egyptians came up the Colorado River and settled large parts out from the Colorado River into Arizona. And of course, they would come into Texas, New Mexico. And at that time, the Solomon Sea was a sea, and it went all the way up to Mount Shasta. So they would also come up that way into what we now call California, and all the way up to Mount Shasta and settle coastal, because that's almost a sea. And there's surf shops to this day in there. There's nothing, and Missouri river boats that are up in the sands up there. So it's, that's up. There was a civilization that actually, it's called the Mound Builders. And Teotihuacan, if you look into it, they had to rebuild it, but it was pretty much a mound, a series of mounds. And they excavated and rebuilt them to look how they are now. Well, Teotihuacan type structures of 3 pyramids, laid out similar to Giza, are all over the world, including this continent as well. They went all the way up into Illinois. They were there in Chicago, and they tore them down, got rid of them, and took a lot of the materials and items they found, like big, tall, red-haired people in stasis chambers, into places like under the Smithsonian or the Getty. And so they've been doing this since the first time the Europeans came to the, as they call it, the New World. There is nothing new about it. Even before the Egyptians, the Chinese, came here, and even older cultures came here. And there was, we have to remember, several worldwide civilizations. You had the Atlantean Lemurian cultures, you had the Polarians, the Hyperboreans. So all of these cultures have built underground facilities and massive pyramid structures. The pyramid structures were not built by the Egyptians. They were built by beings, the early dynasties that are not originally from Earth. Goes back in the Temple of Seti. If you look at, as you're standing looking at where you came in, the right wall is the accepted dynasties. The left wall ain't even mentioned. And you go back to Osiris. Well, if you look at people like Akhenaten and Osiris, They are not human. They have no sagittal suture in their skull. That means they're not human. And the genetics, to the very best of the genetics of the ancient sarcophagi they're finding, that's why they don't tell you about finding sarcophagi of those early pharaohs, because they have no more than 80% at the most of the genetic structure of human beings. Well, most beings on Earth have more similarity with us. Even plants, in a lot of cases, have that much similarity with us, which means they're not from here. It's really obvious. So the pyramids in Egypt now, under Khufu or Khufri, however you say it, they're starting to put out what they found long ago, called deep underground structures. And when that gets done, it's going to go so deep under there. They're going to find things like there's a craft that is 1 mile in diameter that is underneath the Giza Plateau, a non-terrestrial craft that is able through stealth technology to go through solid rock. And it's down there and it's still active, just like there are other things like seed arcs all over the world to reseed it should there be a worldwide calamity brought here by civilizations that want to see humanity succeed. And so that's why we are, throwing off this cabal. And it is extremely deep in evil and interconnected through everything. And so the alliance had to do the same thing. And that's why people don't understand what Trump is saying and doing. And he's constantly changing what he's doing. And it says it's just chaos. It's chaos. He is deep state. The only way to defeat them is to confuse them and hit them everywhere at once. And they don't know if you're with them or against them, and you seem like it, and then you're doing the hand signals, and then you're going and you're taking out people, and then you're not. And well, that's what they do too. They take out each other all the time. So it looks like he is, but he is not. And we see the ongoing operations, those people that plot the 10-kilometer that don't have the P waves. It becomes quite obvious that the recent facility that blew up in the Middle East, a seaport, blew up. That too was the alliance taking out something that was used for human trafficking. And that was coming through a maglev system all the way from Turkey and the Middle East and the Gaza and all of that. And then the Gaza in Israel and all of that, Jerusalem is attached to the Vatican underneath there. And there's tunnels and systems that go through there. And I know when I first came out, people are going, oh my gosh, this guy's making it up as he goes. And now everybody's going, a lot of people are coming out with it. And it's like, how did I know? Because I did research. It wasn't, I knew some, well, not some. I knew a lot from my death experience, but people wanted to see the proof. So I've researched and pulled up the information, and I've had some high-level people, when I prayed on it, God would send me some incredible people that would tell me and show me and give me documents and stuff and show me the information. So that's where we are today. Back to you.
Oh yeah, I don't have much time left. We've been going an hour for 45 minutes. Maybe we can go for maybe 15 more minutes. I was going to say, one thing that I thought was interesting. Some people ask so many questions, but do you ever notice a lot of these UFOs coming out of volcanoes? What do you think is up with that? Like, is there something up with that, or is it just like what they do with the oceans? Like they come out of the oceans. Maybe they have bases in the oceans, bases in volcanoes. Is it the same thing? And is that ETs, or would that be us?
Most of the major volcanic activity are on the nexus point of several ley lines, which is a vortex power area. And so they're using that to go interdimensional or to go into hyperdrive with an added push, so to speak.
Wow.
Watch in season 6 of, I think it's in season 6 of Shield series. They go into using the ley lines and using them for various purposes. And as I said, the pyramids are on specific locations for the same purposes in, well, not exactly the same, but for purposes of using the energy, or they used to have a worldwide free energy network as part of what they were.
Wow, that's amazing. And somebody wanted me, as Ghetto Out wants me to ask you about Skinwalker Ranch. Do you have an opinion on that?
On what?
Skinwalker Ranch.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I've actually been on the, I think it is East City, and I think he knows of that. I talked about that on there. And yeah, Skinwalker Ranch is, Skinwalkers, the Native Americans knew about them a lot of time, for forever. They're another abomination is the only thing that comes to mind. But anyway, yeah, that stuff's real.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Well, I mean, maybe I was gonna go through see if there are any more questions. I think that's a lot. I'll just ask you: is there anything else you want to cover? We have like 85 people watching, so that's cool. But is there anything else you want to cover before we finish up today?
Um, I'm fine with whatever, you would like to cover. I think we cover, allowed me to ramble on for very long periods of time, more than anybody else. But, the main thing to realize is to do your research when you're looking at things. So, one thing I would say is a lot of people, the way the enemy just has kept us, and actually, for those people that went to public schools and raised in traditional fashion, you've been mind farmed pretty badly. And so, in that mind farming is to attack others, and to the point where now the human species and mankind divide and conquer themselves. So, good Christians will attack other Christians because you don't believe what I believe. Because in the Bible it says XYZ. And I'm saying, yeah, but that word going back to the Hebrew doesn't mean that. In the Hebrew, that has a completely different meaning. So, because I don't believe that the earth is a certain way, then I am compromised or evil, or that we're dividing and conquering. Why do you think they took this place over so darn easy? Because we divide and conquer ourselves now. The trick the enemy gave us, this is what in Carlos Castaneda goes into, that in a predator came to Earth a long time ago, and the trick they did, we used to be capable of feats of perception that were beyond comprehension. In other words, 12 strands. The trick they did is they gave us their mind. One of power, control, ego, pride, all the deadly sins, in other words. So, in using those, saying that somebody's bad and evil because they say things you don't agree with. Well, look at the overall long term of how that person's talking since the time you've heard them listening. So, for example, for you or for me, all the time I've been out on the internet, 6 years or so. Is it consistent? Is it overall doing good? Or is it like a Democrat? One time they're saying one thing, the next time they're saying the complete opposite. One mass works. No, you need two. No, and apparently you need this thing in your arm. Well, you need that will level the curve. No, that won't work. You need two. You need three. You need four. You need five. You need six. I mean, and they keep moving and changing and everything. That's how you know, not by their word, but by their work. So follow the work and follow the word. If all you have is the word, what is the overall effects? I used to put all kinds of health materials out until I got warned not to, about things I've studied, natural medicine and acupuncture in Sri Lanka, where it came from, and all kinds of herbology and things, natural ways to be healthy. But I can't do that anymore. So I gave it all to Dr. Northrup and Dr. Merritt, and hopefully they're putting it out, and cleansing techniques and everything else. Because what the mainstream is telling people how you get ill, like RFK is now coming out and saying it, is not true. For the majority, like they're researching now, Trump has him researching autism, and how come it went from 1 in 30 to 1 in 2 children have it. Well, look at when things started. Certain things started at certain times, and then you have this explosion of cancer or autism or etc. And what went just before that started coming out? When did they create the Cancer Foundation, the American Cancer Foundation? Just after they did what? So, I can't even say it anymore, but it's what is going on. And it's the way to pin it down if the person is putting that information out, at least mentioning it. And are they attacking other people? Do they regularly attack other people? Well, that's cabal. That's being cabal. They've trained us to do the job for them. So that's why when people ask me, who do I think is good to follow? Who do you resonate with? I'm not going to call out anybody. I have people I believe are not telling the truth or saying things that are not accurate or that maybe not good people, maybe cabal within the truther community. I'm not going to call them out because my job and our job is to put out the information we have, not on each other, on the cabal itself, the people that everybody knows, the Rockefellers, Carnegies, Dows, DuPonts, Mellons, the Black, White, and Gray Pope, the Davos group, those people in that, those people that we see obviously talking about the New World Order as a thing that's coming, and we will have it, like the Shurs, who were actually changed their name and had a man and his son as president, and the presidents we had that weren't even born in this country that had a male for a wife. I'm like, these people become obvious. It's those people we need to focus on. And even then, it's to focus on what they're doing and to get it to stop. Get the child trafficking and the wars done. Get them to come to an end. And that can be done through envisioning, through prayer, and through talking to each other and getting the truth out and letting people know what's going on in the world and waking up and praying and being a kind and considerate and loving person. And to the best of your ability, be compassionate and kind and considerate and respectful of others, but call out evil. And I mean evil in the world of leading the governments of the world, not within the truther community. It's not our job to hurt each other. That's doing the job of the evil ones. So we need to be kind, considerate, and respectful and loving to each other, more like I can always say, our Lord and Redeemer and Savior, Jesus Christ. And, people will say, oh, well, that, was a lie too. Well, I know people don't follow things the way I do or believe the way I do, like the Druze that are being wiped out of Syria right now by Israel and by HMS. Why are they being wiped out? And what do they know about life? There's a significant difference. Another thing that it's still in the Bible, but you have to look carefully. And so people don't believe in that, and they attack me because I don't believe in it. I know it's true, but in understanding our time on Earth and how long that is and how here and what we do while we're here. So each of us have our own understanding, and if you don't resonate with parts of that, take what parts resonate, and if it too much doesn't, just keep your mouth shut and go somewhere else, because otherwise you're doing the bidding of the cabal. And in the long term, what you're doing is, if you're going to follow a certain book of the Bible as the absolute what's coming, well, if it's for you, the absolute is what's coming, that's the only possibility. That is an envisioning. And what you accept as absolute will be for you and everybody that believes with you what happens. It's why the cabal does long-range precondition and puts out movies they do showing worldwide conflict and destruction of the world, because they want us to focus our minds on that. Because if they don't have a soul, it does nothing. But if you have a soul and you focus on that, the soul is so immensely powerful. It's more powerful than the largest atomic weapon on Earth. It's more powerful than the sun. And so in focusing that energy, it creates the future. Your envisioning is a prayer to God of how you want to experience the future. Well, if you're envisioning a worldwide destruction and you get a whole lot of people with you, that will come. for those people with you. But for us that are focusing on kindness and love in a world free of trafficking of human beings and children and the end of war and conflict, that too will come. Because if you hold that singularly in your mind and don't buy into that stuff, it doesn't matter what shape the planet is. What matters is that we envision a future where life is respected. All life is given by God, the one creator of everything everywhere, a vast, infinite universe. Whether you believe it or not doesn't matter. What matters is whatever you believe, you treat others with respect. All life is given by God here for, and we were created by God as custodians of it. And as custodians, we should be good parents. That means be strong and truthful and honest, but be kind and considerate and respectful. And, with children, you don't want to terrify them. You want to wake them up and have them become good, strong adults. And so that's what the truther community should be doing. Unfortunately, there's a lot that aren't. And so I just ignore that and I continue on and going. I love going to new platforms like yours for the exact same reason, because you get to talk to people that you would not ever be able to talk to. It's to get to more people and to get the truth out so that we can envision the end of that. And envisioning is a prayer of what you want to see. That is the wave of gravity. It's called gravity, that goes to the center of creation, which is in every atom, every planet, every star, every person that has a soul in the center of their being, and their human being. It's in the Dantian. That center is a singularity. It causes quantum entanglement because that singularity is in the center of every atom in the entire universe. And that is a source of infinite energy. At that level, the amount of energy is, NASA's done this, calculate, and many scientists have done this. If you converted the entire universe into energy, that energy at that small singularity is 30 magnitudes more than the entire universe. That's what free energy is. Why is it? And you can constantly pull energy out of it, and it's still the same amount. Why? Because it's coming from where? From what? From whom? The one that created absolutely everything everywhere. The infinite source that is more than all of the universe combined. So by 30 orders of magnitude, and even then some. That's all we know of that we can calculate and measure out. It's beyond our understanding. It's coming from God. So it's infinite. So when you pray, it goes, and you envision, it goes into the singularity, the throne of God, and then it comes out as light through the word of God into light. And in the Stanford University, they did an experiment in a vacuum with sound and created blue light. So from the word becomes light that then slows down to and becomes at different densities physical reality. And that's where we are. And so in that, how we lost our way is to buy into all this ego and pride, and I know more, and I am right and you are wrong. Be kind, considerate, and respectful, or you will wind up on a world and on a future. That's how it is, where nobody likes anybody and everybody's fighting everybody. That's not for me. And as far as I'm concerned, that's my job on earth, is to give out the truth and to be as often as kind and respectful and considerate to everybody I can, while trying to shed the light on the truth as much as I can. So thank you for having me on your platform, and God bless.
Yeah. And do you want to tell everybody where they can find you? And again, and thank you, Gene. This was amazing.
Thank you. So, sorry I didn't share anything. Usually the first time you ask the big questions. So I've never said it all in one place at one time until now. So I have a website that I put decodes every week. We have 2 to 3 live streams. At the end of the month, I have a Q&A on the membership section, which is $7 a month or $77 a year. and that's less than a quarter a day. And then it's called deep dives because in submarines that I was in my military career for over 20 years, I did over 12 years underwater. Well, 12 years to the day underwater, over 12 years at sea. And so in a submarine, when you're on the surface, you can be seen easily and free, but you're freely, easily seen. So this is when you dive deep, then you have to use some technology that costs something. So the deep dives area is the membership area, and we do decodes, and like I said, I do a Q&A there at the end of every month. And so I'm currently working on Introduction to Atlantis, Chapter 1, Chapter 2 at Lemuria as Antarctica, Chapter 1, 2, and 3, Introduction to Operation High Jump, Base 211, the Operation Tabaran, Operation High Jump. I learn a lot of things all at the same time. Plus, the BFS team does decodes there as well. We've got a lot of things that, like I've said, we have and the one on the Grand Canyon. We have one on the time travel to get rid of what we were talking about today, and a lot of materials on there. So my free website where this interview will go and all my other interviews, when I get a link from the person on the platform, and you can go there and you won't have commercials. So other than what the host puts on, and that is blessedforservice.org. And then I have a Rumble, which is Real Gene Decode. And I put the newer interviews for the last about 2 years on there, plus some of my decodes and information, the ones that I think are so important that I share them with, they need to be shared with the world, like expanding Earth and hollow Earth and the luminosity of the soul. So the change, the shift, and the thing on the recent solar eclipse, those things are there. So that's what
awesome.
People can find Real Gene Decode on social media of Truth Social and Telegram too.
I wanted to just ask you real quick if you had to deal with censorship too, Gene, because I'll just tell you, I don't know if I told you this, but I used to have a YouTube page with 20,000 followers, and YouTube nuked me. They took my entire channel down, and that's why I'm like, well, you know what? Maybe Rumble's a better place for now because, at least they let me put my content, like, I don't know. It's just like, have you had to deal with that as well?
Yeah, I have a Rumble. I don't, like I said, I don't have a YouTube. I'm going to try to get one, but there is a Gene Decode on YouTube.
Yeah.
That my trademark, now we have it registered along with my signature, and every single thing you see there is registered now. So we're going to go to that YouTube and get it pulled so I can have some cleansed things put up there. You have to be careful what you say. You can't say NAZI. The word, the mustache man that led them in World War II, the thing that went in 2019 and 20 into certain people's parts of their bodies. That you got to be careful what you say. I know all of the words to say, how to say them, and we will do hygienic cleanup on the rest and post some things on YouTube. It's something we're going to get to. So because so many people use YouTube, it's
Yeah.
an amazing platform, but you got to be really, really, really careful.
Yeah.
So
I agree. I started a new channel, but yeah, I agree 100%. It's like some things you can, yeah, yeah, it's good for exposure, but yeah, they're crazy to deal with. They really are. Yeah. Yeah. But no, this was awesome, and thank you again. And yeah, I just want to say, guys, subscribe here on Rumble if you can, if this is your first time watching here. And big thanks to Gene again, and big thanks to Indigo Angel for helping me, get a hold of Gene. And thank you, everybody, and have a good night, everyone. Good night.
thank you, Indy.
Thank you.